If you want to do something, the best way to do that is by practicing. And this video is to help you practice the skill of building apps. In this video, we're going to build Fanny's app. It's a super easy and simple app that can be built in less than 1 hour, especially because most of the bugs have been fixed by yours truly. I say most because there might be some bugs that I have yet to encounter. So if you encounter them, then you have to fix them. It's going to be really great for you to learn how to actually debug stuff. I'll make a video on debugging if you want. If you want that. The video is split into 3 major sections. So it's going to be before building the app, and post build. Because things are not always fully built. So even if the thing looks perfect after you did your internal testing, there's almost always going to be improvements. There's always going to be new technologies and things of that nature. So post building is actually going to be the longest process because it's always going to be there. And to make your life easier, if you want to have access to the full source code of this project and any project shared on this channel, then you can get the full source code for only $1 a month. And that's all. If you're interested, there's a link below in the description for you to get access to it. And once you purchase the subscription, then I will send that to you. Give us up to 24 hours just to make sure that you get access to it. Now, before we get started, I'd like to just share with you the difficulty of this project. If you already have built an Android app, then this is going to be super, super easy. If you know Java, you've never built an Android app, then I would say this is still going to be easy. If you don't know Java, it's in the medium-ish area of difficulty. And if you do not know how to code, then yes, this will be difficult. You'll have to re-watch this video multiple times. You're probably going to be, if you're watching this and you didn't get the source code, then you're going to have to rewind, pause a lot. If you have the source code, then it's easy. You're just going to download the source code, kind of look as explain what it is. That being said, though, I do think that if you know Java, you definitely don't, it's not going to be a big deal because it's built in Java. If you don't know any programming, you should still watch, like I said. That being said, if you are struggling with it, this video does not go over the programming basics. We go over the logic of what we're building, not the basics. If you feel stuck and you want to actually understand more of the programming, then I highly recommend you going on YouTube and finding some tutorials on how to actually code. Specifically look for Java. There are this plethora of free information on YouTube. That's how I was able to build apps, mostly from YouTube. I did learn programming from teachers and professors. That being said, most of what I do know is from people on YouTube, which is also kind of the reasons why I'm doing this, so I can give value to people because I got value. There is a nice YouTube video titled Introduction to Programming and Computer Science, a full course. I also will include that in the description. They also have a website for more structured learning called freecodecamp.org, so you can do that and learn. Before we get started, I'm going to show you guys what we're going to be building. We're going to take a look at the app currently so that we know what we're going to build. It's called Fanny, after our client. On open, there's the categories of quotes that she's able to actually click on. And she also has a new category button. So for example, if she wants to create a category around sales, then she just writes sales here and she just adds it. So that'll be there. And if she wants to get quotes because she's feeling angry, then she would click here. And this way she'll get the quote. If she wants to get a new quote, then she clicks new quote. As you can see, there's the quotes here, and then the actual
source. And if she wants to edit this quote, she just clicks on edit right down below. And she's able to edit it. Once she's done, she presses saves and it saves. So she can't edit anymore. And now this is what the quote is actually going to show. So if we click new quote multiple times, so we can see it, now it actually saved, and this is what the new quote is. If she wants to delete it, she press the delete button right below, and it's going to give it an alert dialog. Who's going to make sure she wants to actually delete it, and we're going to press yes. We're going to delete all the quotes. There's only 5, so now there's no more quotes. Because of the way the app is built, technically there is one quote, it's just an empty quote. So what she can do is either edit that one quote, like so. She press edit again, she just clicks here, and new quote, we're just gonna write new quote. And here she's gonna put the source, myself. And then she press save. Otherwise, you can also add a new quote by long pressing the new quote button. It's going to show up a dialog, an alert dialog with 2 edit text. So one is going to be quote. So for that, we're going to do another new quote. Myself as a source. And you're going to press add. And if we press new quote, because it's random, it doesn't always show it. We're just going to do it. So right here, you can see it actually got saved. If we go back, it unfortunately is erased because everything is hard coded. So whenever something gets closed, it is completely gone. We're going to talk about this later on in the video as to how we can actually fix this. Because this project is a simple project for you to learn some skills, some lessons. And in this case, some of the things that you're going to learn is how to add on-click listeners, how to add a on-long-click listener, how to create an alert dialog, how to add a recycler view, which is what this is here. It's a recycler view. So keep watching and then you will learn how to do this. And if you want to get the source code so you can easily reference this, you can do so for this project and all the projects shared on this channel for only $1 a month, $1 USD. If you want to get access to it, there's going to be a link down below for you to actually get it. So do that if you're interested, and keep watching so you can actually build this app.
Like I shared in the previous section of this video, there's a couple things you're going to learn throughout here that you're going to use in any of your projects, and most projects are going to actually end up using these things that you will have to learn. And it's going to be really recycler view. It's a really, really great way to display data with a good UI. Like any scrolling action usually uses some kind of recycler view. We're going to use array adapters. So array adapter is actually the way to attach data to the UI of the recycler view so people can actually see the information that you're displaying. We're going to use on-click listener. That's for buttons, essentially. If you ever have a button on your project, you will have to use an on-click listener. On-long-click listener, I'm not sure if it's called press or click. I think it's click. That's also something you're going to implement. It's not used as much as on-click listener. It is used, though. It's essentially the double click of phones. You're going to learn about intents. That's the way to actually, the way we use in this project is to go from one activity to another. So you need to do that because If you use different activities, then it's a must to be able to actually go from one to the other. We're going to learn to use alert dialogues. It's going to be simple alert dialogue. It's going to be used for any prompts. So if the user is going to do something like deleting something, you want to prompt them before they do that. Or if they want to purchase something, you want to prompt them, let them know they're going to get charged. It's just a two-step method because sometimes they might click something by accident and they will regret it. So you don't want to do that, especially deleting. For example, you're writing something and you just press delete and everything is gone, like they didn't give you a warning, then it kind of sucks. So you want to do that for your customer. And that's essentially what you're going to be learning. We're going to write in the description. There's going to be time stamps for these, so you can refer back to them for any other project you're building, not just this one, because like I said, it's something you're going to be using quite a lot. So make sure if you're struggling to just refer back to this video, it's going to help you. There's obviously Stack Overflow and things of that nature. So either medium that you like to learn, you will get access to it. This is just a video way to learn. I like videos too. So that's the reason I'm doing it. And the reason why I said this app is easy is because the logic is super simple. It's not fully fledged product. The UI is also very basic. So that's why this app is super easy, and that's why you can do it in such a short time span. And because I've already built it out, it makes it even faster because you don't have to think about the logic really. As you go through the project and as you implement some of the things everything there, and you want to improve it, which I'll also include a section in this video on how to improve the app, you will improve it however you want. You could improve the UI, you can improve the functions, you can improve anything and everything. Because it is a very, very basic, and that's the intent, is just learning to practice, and so you can build something relatively quickly. It's not going to take you more than an hour, really. And if you have the source code, it's going to take you the amount of time it takes to actually run the app, so maybe a couple minutes. Section 1, before building. This is a necessary step. You don't want to start building without any idea of what you're going to build. So the first thing you want to know is, what are we building? In our case, a friend of mine, aka Fanny, and I had a conversation. We were having a conversation, and she mentioned an app like this at a time. She said she wanted something like inspiration app. It's going to be in categories. She wants to be able to add quotes. She wants to be able to edit the quotes. And so that's what we were building. That being said, this conversation happened, I don't know how long ago. It was a one-time conversation. So I'm extrapolating from memory. I'm not exactly sure what she wants exactly, which I will also mention, and how we can improve the app. That's a really good way to improve it, is by having a conversation with our client. So if you're thinking of consulting or things of that nature, then this is a very important step, is to talk to your client and figure out what it is that they want. Sometimes they struggle. I've noticed that because they've never built software. They don't know they're like, oh, software is cool. So a really, really good way to do this is by providing them examples of things. So it could be from major companies. So explain to them. Also, make sure when you explain them to this, make sure when you're explaining these things to them, remember your limitations, and in the sense of time, because you do have some limitations. So don't tell them about some complex AI models if you are not able to implement this in a timely manner, or if the customer doesn't have a budget to get outside consultants to help with the project. Because keep those in mind. If they have the budget and the money budget and the time budget, then go crazy and tell them all the greatest things. If they have a budget that allows for X, make sure you only show them X. Don't show them Y, don't show them Z, just show them X. And what I do remember from what she said from our conversation, that she wanted to be able to edit, delete, add. So that's what the app does. Another important question before I start building is, does this exist? Now, this question is especially important if you're looking to create a solution for a problem. The reason why you want to do this is because maybe there's a solution that exists already. So there's a solution that exists and that works really well, then there's no point in investing your time or money into building something else. It's like they say, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if the wheel already exists, you don't have to do it. That being said, if it exists and you notice that the wheel is actually square and they didn't make it round, then you do know that there's a market for it. People are downloading it. People are using it. If you can improve it and make it much better, then people will go to your product. Now, I'm not saying that you're just going to find your product. You'll have to market and sell it. If it's just a slightly better square wheel, then no one will want to do that, because it's sometimes hard to get people to move away from what they already have. And if you're telling them to go from what they already have, which is a square wheel, to a slightly better square wheel, that's a hard sell. If you tell them, hey, this thing is actually a square wheel, I have this round wheel that goes way further, more efficient, then it's a much easier sell, and people will actually leave what they already have because it's not good to what you built, which would allow you to become the next tech billionaire. So if you find something like that, do it, build it, and become very rich. In our case, though, this is purely for learning, so I didn't research if there's apps like that already. I'm pretty sure there are. It's not a very complex idea, which for learning is actually good too, because then you can use inspiration from other developers as to build this app better. I built this kind of out of my mind. Sounds like I built this out of my mind. I didn't look into other apps for inspiration, which actually is not great because aesthetics is my weak point. So I like to use other people's work as inspiration because it's much easier for me to figure out what looks good than build something good, if that makes sense. Then the next question is actually, what are we building? And the best way to do this actually is the easiest, fastest, and most efficient way to figure out what we're going to build is actually writing down on pen and paper. This is an example of the wireframe of the app. It's very simple. It's you might not be able to see this clearly. Essentially, it's a recycler view. They click it, it opens another screen that shows the category, the quote, the buttons here, and the dialogues that come in if they want to delete, if they want to add a new quote. And once you've done that, there's a couple things that come from it. Is first, you're able to figure out what the flow is going to be like. That's very important. And you're able to actually share it with people. So if you are building this as an actual business, it's a really, 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 really important step, because it allows it to share it with your potential customers, because this way they can tell you a bit better what they want. That being said, people don't always know what they want. That though, it still will give you a hint to what would make it better. Because if they see something like that makes no sense, then you know this doesn't work. If they're like, oh wow, this is great, like I understand this, then you know you're on the right track. Another thing is it allows you to collaborate. So if you're working with a client, for example, and you're consulting, it allows you to figure out if what you think they're talking about makes sense. Because now it's visual, it's easier to understand the interpretation of it. Because they can say they want X, and in your mind you are thinking Y. Like they may say the color gray, but they actually mean black. So that's why having it down on paper makes it easy, and you can make edits really, really quickly. Like, for example, if your client wanted an app that live stream video and you did not understand, the communication was not clear, and you built something completely different, now that's a lot of time that you're gonna have to spend to fix it, because unfortunately it was your fault. Like, you have to take responsibility for it because there's no clear communication. So that's why you want to make sure to do this on pen and paper first. Give it to them, edit it, because pen and paper is really, really cheap. It's really quick. You can just edit it properly. It allows you to see the visual. It allows you to figure out what you're going to build logically. If you're going to need database and how the database should interact, how the UX is going to be, so the user experience. It allows collaboration. So if you're working with a team, then you guys can give each other feedback and figure out how to actually structure this. And once you're done with the pen and paper, the next step would actually be to actually design it. Because that's something I've also come to realize, that sometimes on pen and paper, because the dimensions are odd, you're just making up dimensions. Something could look like it would make sense, and then when you actually design it with the proper dimensions, like, wow, this makes no sense. It looks ugly. That's why you would do that. And it allows you to test out the colors. Like here, there's no color besides the boxes, like the blue pen. So there's no colors. When you're actually designing it, it will give you the colors. I don't have the files, the Adobe XD file for this project, so I won't be able to share the original one because it's slightly different. Like, this is a little different. This is a little different, and that to the actual design is a little different, and to the actual final product is a little different. That's something you'll notice. You refine as you build out the things. Even the final product will be a little different from the design. Either from limitations, either you're like, oh, if I did this, it would actually add 10 more hours of programming, or a week or a month, whatever it is. So then you can morph the project to fit into what is needed. Last thing in this section that is going to be beneficial to you is what tools can you actually use to design. You can use Adobe's Suite. They have Photoshop. They have Adobe XD. I do use Adobe XD, like the free version, and I don't recommend it. Unfortunately, it used to work well, so I'm going to look for another solution. You can use PowerPoint too if you want. You could use Sketch. Sketch looks really good. I haven't used it. I'm probably going to have to use Sketch instead of Adobe XD. That's not free. And then you also have the option of using Figma. Supposedly Figma is really, really great. I haven't really looked into it. I don't like web apps. Really. But if you like it, I mean, there seems to be some advantages. I personally don't like them.
Section 2, building. Now that we know what we want to build and what it should look like, we can actually start building it. For this particular project, it's already been coded. You'll have a view of the code and an explanation of what each snippet does. If you're interested in getting the full source code, then you can do so below. There's a link in the description. It's only $1 US a month, and you get access to the source code of this project and any other project shared on this channel. Link in the description below. So how the projects is structured, as you can see, it's called Fanny here. It's structured into the 3 packages. We have the activities folder, the array adapters, and the objects folder. So the activities only has 2 activities. It's going to be our main activity and our quote activity. Our array adapters only have 1 array adapter. It's the categories adapter. And our objects folder has 2 objects. It has the category object and the quote object. So what is in our main activity? So our main activity actually has just 2 UI components. It has the recycler view and a button. So what this recycler view is, it just shows the categories of quotes. The second one the new button is a button to actually add a new category. So after we've had those two recyclers, I'll show you the XML. Actually, I'll show you this a little bit later. Well, actually, I'll show it to you now that it makes more sense. So this is the activity main. This is the XML. I'll do a screen split so you can see. There you go. So it's just showing they're attached to each other. So the new button here and the IDs are here, the new button ID and the recycler view ID. So after we did the UI, the next step was actually to put data into a recycler view. And we did this with adding an array list of hard-coded array list of categories. So we did data. So we created the array list here called data of categories. And then here we initialized the array list and then we added data to it. We added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories. Now, the next step is actually know what the category is. It's one of the objects that we've created, of the two objects. Category is a very simple object. All it does is contains a string title. That's all it has. So when you initialize category, you can initialize it as an empty object. You can initialize it as with a title. And we have a getter and a setter. So get title and the set title. Set title we don't use, so we can erase that. And get title we do use the other project. So the next, so in the recycler view here, we set the adapter to be new categories adapter. We'll go over that a little bit later. For now, we're going to go over the item decoration here. So the item decoration, it's pretty simple in what it does. It's to add some spaces between each element. So the project, when you saw the buttons, there's a space in between. That's what the item decoration is for. And we also added a grid layout manager so that it's not just a list that's one by one like this. It becomes a grid, and we did it into 2 columns. If we did this 3, it would be 3 columns. Since we have 8 elements, it would be 3 by 2.5, basically. 3 by 3 almost, and one row wouldn't have, one column would only have 2 rows. And this is the class for the item decoration. So if you want to use this, I'll just share it with you on the screen so you can copy and paste if you don't have the source code, which you can always get for just $1. You can pause it if you want. This is just to show you the actual code. Because the categories adapter is more intricate, we're going to go over the actual set on click listener for new button. So when we create a set on click listener, that just means that once the button sees that the user clicked on it, it's going to do something. In our case, we're going to show the category dialog. The category dialog is a alert dialog, a material alert dialog that we created. It's very simple. We've also included a category edit text, and we added to the builder. So we said builder.setView category edit text. This way is when Fanny puts a new category, then we're actually able to read it. And we do this here. We create a new category based on whatever she wrote after she pressed add. And we just add it to the data. Very simple. So once that's done, it gets added to data and now it becomes a new category. Now we can move on to the actual categories adapter, because this one is a little different. It's a little more intricate. So I'm going to open that up. This is the code. This is the constructor, public categories adapter, array list of data of categories. In our case, we just call it data to make it easier. So an array adapter is a way to tie the data to the UI. In our case, we've created a VH item. So here, we're creating a VH item. That's the UI component that we're going to be attaching it to. And I'll show you what the VH item is. It just has two things, a title, TV, which means text view, and a card view. And the XML that goes with it is called cell category. We're going to split this to the right. As you can see, it's really very, very simple. Just two UI components, the card view here that contains a text view. So that's where we actually initialize it so we can play with it. Now, what we want to do is actually get the specific category and attach it to the UI. So in the list of UI, when we open the project, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes with text. This is where we actually get that. The first thing we do is we actually get the current data. So whichever one we're supposed to get, it's done through here on the bind view holder. The easiest way to do it is just do category. In our case, our object is called category equals data that get position. So the current position that we're at. This is a list of colors that we've added. As you remember from the project, the final project, there's different colors for each little boxes. And again, we just did a random thing to get the colors. There was no complex algorithm. It was just randomly selected color from here. So we call it through here. We get a random number here. You can change the colors that you want. I'll show you later with the color. Actually, yeah, I'll show you later, not now. For now, we're just going to go the finalize the on bind view holder. The next thing we do is actually in the title text view, we're going to set the text, and the text is going to be what the title of the category is. Remember that category only has one variable, which is title, and that's how we get it here. We get title and we set the text of it to the title. The next thing we're going to do is set the card background color to be colors.random. Well, colors, and then the index is going to be random. Again, we just do a random color from the list of colors we have. And we actually are going to, I'm going to skip this for now, and then we're going to come back to it after I explain this section of the code. We created a on click listener for the card view. So that's if we want to remove the category, and it calls the remove category function. So the remove category function is another alert dialog. This time doesn't have any edit text. It's just an alert dialog with a yes or no option. If the user does click yes, then we're going to remove from the data the data at our current position from the array list of data. And we're also going to tell the array list, the array adapter, that we did this so that it can update the UI with notify item removed position. So this updates the UI so that the user can see the changes that they've made. And now we can go back to the regular set on click listener. So what we want to do here is actually create an intent for the quote activity, because that's what activity we want to open. So after they click the category, we want to show them all the all the quotes for that category. And another thing we're going to do is actually going to put an extra in the intent. So this is a data load that category will be able to listen to, get that data. And lastly, we start the activity with this intent and the data load, which means now we can actually open the category, the quote activity. I'm just going to close some of these files and we're going to start at the beginning. The quote activity has 6 UI components. It has a category text view. This is a text view that's going to be populated by the data that was sent from the intent from the main activity. We have 2 edit text, quote edit text, and source edit text. We have, I will also explain why we went with edit text later on and not text view for these two, for the quote and the source. So the source is just whoever said that quote. And we have 3 buttons. We have a new button, which is supposed to do 2 things actually. The new button is supposed to show a new quote or allow the user on one click to add a new quote themselves. The edit button is if they want to edit the quote, and delete button is if they want to delete the quote. We also have 2 variables. We have an array list of quotes, called quotes, and we have a int position. So that's just so we can keep track of the quote that we're working with. Next thing we did was initialize a variable or array list and set up our UI components, attach them to the actual XML with the correct IDs. I'm gonna make sure that the categories, well, not the categories, the IDs match, because otherwise it's not gonna run, it's not gonna work. The next thing we actually did was disable the edit text. We don't want them to do anything with the edit text. They can't. They're not allowed to make any changes to it. We have to add a set on click listener for the new quote button and an on long click listener for that. We're going to go over the function of the new quote, like the regular function called set quote for the new quote button. So when they click on the new quote button, on the simple click, it's going to just show them a new quote. And that's done through the set quote method. We're going to go and see what that is. So set quote, what it does, it takes a quote. It takes a quote and then it sets the category TV to be set text, quote that get category, and then the quote edit text to be quote that get quote, and source edit text is set text quote that get source. Now, if you remember here, we called the function get quote instead of set quote. So get quote returns a quote, and we're going to go over what get quote is. So we create a temporary quote here. We didn't give it any value. We check if quote.size equals 1. If it only equals 1, then we just return quote.get 0. So the reason why is because quotes will never be less than 1. It can always be greater than 1. So it's either 1 or greater than 1. So if it's 1, then we can only return the first quote, which would be quote at 0, because in the way that it's coded, we cannot have we can't have no quotes. Otherwise, if there's more than one quote, what we're going to do is just randomize and then put position to be random so that we can keep track of which quote we are going to be serving. And next, we're just going to say that quote, the temp quote actually equals to quotes that get random. So the new quote, and then we're going to return that quote, which will be then received by set quote, and it was going to be displayed to our user. Now, I would actually go over the quote object so we can have a better understanding of what the quote object does. So we're going to open that file, the quote. A quote has three components as a category, as a quote, and the source. Very simple. We need a category so we can keep track of what it belongs to. Does it belong to anger? Does it belong to loneliness, to wealth, to broke? Like, what does it belong to? This dot quote is what the quote actually is, like the text of the quote, and the source is whoever shared the quote with people. We actually don't use the set methods. These are auto generated. You can delete them or you can keep them in case you end up doing that, and in case you end up using them. Now we are actually going to go to the new quote that's set on long click listener. So after call, if the user holds the new quote button for a while, it's going to show the add quote dialog. So that's where they can actually add a new quote, not two quotes, just a new quote. So we're going to go to show quote add quote dialog. It's going to be a new material alert dialog builder, and it's going to be slightly different from the new category dialog that we created in the main activity. Since we want to add two edit text, the alert dialog doesn't allow for two views to be added. The way we were able to handle this was actually by just adding a linear layout as a set view in this method here. So we create a new linear layout and we set the view here because it can like have one view. That being said, the linear layout can have multiple child views, and that's what we did. So we set the orientation to vertical. We want them to stack up on top of each other, and we created two edit text, and we added to the linear layout. We added the hence, and we did builder.setView.linear layout. So it still technically is considered just one view. That's the view, and this way we can actually have both edit text. Then we call the function. So if the user does decide to actually add the quote, we call the function add new quote, and we get the quote edit text and the source edit text. Now we're gonna go over the add new quote function. So the add new quote takes the message and the source. It creates a new quote here, and it takes the category from the category text view, which is from from the from the from the array adapter. So when they clicked on the quote they actually wanted to see, the category they want to see, then we got that information and we set it up into the category TV. And this is what we're getting. Again, because quotes the size can be one, what we check is if it's an empty quote, because it's still going to be our quotes array list can never be less than one. So we're going to check if it's one. If it's one, and if at the index of 0, which would be the first quote, we check if it's empty. If it's empty, then we set the quote, at index 0 to be this new quote here. If it's not empty, that means there's an actual quote there. Then we just add it to the array list, and then we append it. Now it becomes a size 2. Here it stays as size 1. Here it becomes a size 2. Otherwise, if it's greater than 1, we just append it. There's nothing else we have to really do. Now, the next button we're actually going to talk about is the edit button. The edit button is a little bit longer in logic. I'm just going to go over it quickly. if edit button dot get text dot toString equals save. So that means if they already press edit and it turns to save, it's going to do this block. For now, we're just going to go over what will actually happen if they just click edit for the first time. It's going to allow editing to happen. So it's going to go to enable editing to true, and then it's going to set the text to save. So enable editing, I will show you what that means. It just turns quote edit text and source edit text to be enabled based on this Boolean value here. And in that case, is going to be true. So it makes it true. So now they can actually edit the quote. And once they're ready to save, it's going to check here that says, yes, the text is saved. The first thing it's going to do is going to change it back to edit. It's going to create a new quote based on the category.tv, get text toString, whatever the quote is that they've updated, and the source. So once again, we're going to check if quotes.size is 1. If it is, just like earlier, we're going to set the quote to be at 0 to be the new quote that we just created here. Otherwise, we're going to find the position. So that's why we have this position here, because once we got the quote, it gave us the position. We saved it as a position from the random number. And now we're going to update the quote at this position to the new quote that we just edited. And lastly, we disable editing. So in an enable editing, we pass the value of false. Then we have the delete button. The delete button has its own set on click listener, and it calls the show delete dialog. And the show delete dialog is going to be here. It's another alert dialog, and it's very simple. Once they click delete, which is to make sure they actually want to delete, we go to delete quote. We call the delete quote function. And the delete quote function is going to be right here. So the first thing we do is we check if the size is 1. That means that there's only one quote. We remove the quote at index 0. We can actually set, that's something I just realized we could do set quote instead. Set at index and then at whatever quote. But for now, what we did here was that we removed it. Then we create a new quote that's empty. And we add it to the array list of quotes. So that's why the size is never 0. But really, it's part of the reason why it's because of the delete quote function here. And we set the quote, which we went over this function already earlier on. Otherwise, if the size is greater than 1, we just find the quote at the current position from get quote, and we just remove it from that. And we just set a new quote. So a new random quote is going to be set so the user can see a quote. That's what delete quote does. And since we are on this delete quote function, I'll explain why. It turns out to never be 0. So there's 2 reasons why. The first one is that we want the user to be able to easily add a quote when there's not one. So that means if there's no quotes, it can just go in the edit text, press edit, and then just start typing. And second is because as I was building the second, which is actually the biggest reason why, is because when I was building this project, I ended up putting myself in a pigeonhole with the code. And if I wanted to make sure that the quotes that size would be equal to 0, I would have to refactor the code and add more time to it. So I decided not to do that. This functions properly. The user doesn't really know that that there's still an empty quote. They don't really know that. They don't care really. They just want to use it. So that's why we kept it. I would advise you as you do this project to find a way to have a have it empty. So you don't need to have an like the quote array list to be empty. So you don't have to have a size of one all the time. You can refactor that and do that to improve the code itself. That being said, you don't necessarily have to. Now that I'm talking about this, I do think there's an area where this would create an issue. That's if the user, when there's no quotes, instead of editing the empty quote, they decide to long press new quote and add a new quote. That would create an issue. So that's actually a bug I just realized while filming this right now. So that would be a reason why you want to refactor it. Like when I was building this, I ran into some different bugs that I fixed, and that was one of the solutions. But now that we're going over the logic, turns out this is another bug too. And that's the beauty of programming. You can find bugs though you didn't realize it. So we're almost done with the building. It's a very, very simple project. I mean, everything was pretty simple about it. The next thing we're actually going to do, because I spoke about category text view, like when we get the text, whenever we get a quote, set a quote. And the way we actually get this is, so we're going to call this intent equals get intent. So it's calling for the intent that was created when this activity was created. And that was when, if you remember in our array adapter, we did context that start activity intent, but this with the extras. So this is where it gets called. This is where we catch that intent. And here we actually get the string, the get string extra. That's where we get the actual value. And so that becomes the category equals intent that get extra category. It has to be the exact same. So we have to use the exact name. If it's lowercase, you have to make sure it's lowercase. If it's uppercase, in programming, which based on experience, if you're not new to programming, then you know everything is case sensitive. If you are new to programming, this is your first video pertaining to programming, then everything is very case sensitive when it comes to programming. So make sure that everything is done properly with the case. So now what we are doing here, this here is to populate the quotes array list. The first thing we do is just check if the category is not null, so that means there's a value, and we create a switch statement for the category. We find the case in our instance. We can have anxiety, we can have loneliness, we can have angry, we can have depressed, we can have broke, we can have happy. And if the case is anxiety, for example, then we're going to call the function add anxiety quotes, and then we're going to set quote get quote function. So the add anxiety quotes, what it does, again, because everything is hard coded, it just populates the quotes array list with these quotes. So it's 5 quotes about anxiety. And once it does that, it calls the set quote function, and it just finds a random quote from the anxiety quotes array list. Same thing for loneliness, same thing for happy. It's just hard-coded quotes. And that's essentially the bulk of the project. It was very simple. I believe it took less than 30 minutes to film the logic behind it. I'm going to go over some details that you may want to know about. For example, you see here there's a yellow underline below save. So if you're on a Mac, you press Option and you press Enter. What you can do is actually extract string resource. All right, you do this and you do that. And the reason why you would want to do this is because you can change the, it's easier to change text if it's all saved in one area. So like say, for example, we want to change save to saved, just add a D. Like if we have a bunch of those texts throughout a project, we'll have to manually do it. If we do this and put as a string resource, then we just have to change it in one place, which is going to be on the left side in strings here. So you see how it says save here. So if we just want to change it, we change whatever it is, and we can update every single string throughout the project. Another added benefit, which I believe is the reason why they want us to do this, that Android Studio is calls us, is because of translation. So if you're creating a project for the global world, then you will want to do this. You will be able to create different locale, I believe is the word for it. Yes, that's what they use here. So if you want to put Spanish, then it will automatically update the language based on the user's phone settings, which adds, which is very beneficial to your user if they only speak a different language from what you coded in. And again, it adds the benefit of you don't have to do some logic inside your own project to figure out what language you're using. It just automatically does it, and it does it for each and every string that uses the actual string resource. So it's the added benefit. Another thing that we actually did in this project, a little detail that I will mention here, is when we created this alert dialog, we also included a style alert dialog theme. And I'll show it to you in the themes folder here. And the reason why I ended up doing this is because the positive button was not showing, was white. So this is the alert dialog theme. I would advise you to just copy and paste it and then just change it accordingly to whatever you need to do. But here you set the negative button style. So the no to black, and you set the positive to red so that they know what to click. You can put it to whatever color you want, which then leads to the other detail is actually adding colors to your project. So in your colors XML file, if you want to add a color, for example, from top of mind, I believe gray is this. So you do color name equals gray. I believe it's 303030. Okay, so that would be gray. So if you want to add gray or whatever color it is that you want, this is all gray. I don't know like hex codes off the top of my mind, but whatever it is that you want, then you would just do that and then you put the hex. So this way you can just use these and it makes your project, in my opinion, easier to read if you just use things like that. Because for example, if we in the categories of adapter, had we created hex here instead, it would have been quite confusing. But if we just use the actual color theme, then we can easily assume what it's going to look like. Oh, this should be pink, this should be orange, this should be yellow, this should be green. It's easier to debug. And if it's wrong, we can always refer back to the colors. And again, this is one of the reasons why you want to do this is so everything can kind of be consistent throughout the project, just like the string resource. Because if you're using orange and turns out like using different hex values for orange, because let's say you open the project on Monday and then you're like, oh, we need orange here, and you use a hex value of orange, and then a week later, there's another class that you have to work on another activity, and and you end up using a different hex because you don't remember what the other hex was, then it creates kind of a ugly thing. So you want to avoid that, and that's the reason why you would want to actually add these things throughout your XML. So your strings, your colors, and your themes here. you can reuse them throughout the project.
Now we're in section 3, post building. And the first question we have to answer is, has the app been able to accomplish the goals we set out to accomplish? And the answer for this app is yes and no. Now, the app comes hard-coded with values like categories and quotes. Fanny's able to edit the quotes. She's able to add quotes. She's able to delete quotes. So that's why I say yes, we did accomplish those goals, because that was one of the primary goals. Now, the reason why I said no, it didn't finish accomplishing goals, because there's something else beyond that, and it's actually the saving. The app that we built does not save the information that she's done locally or externally on some kind of server. I do think that's frustrating. Like, you do some work and it just erases every single day. So it's not useful. And the best way to improve that really is, well, which is kind of the next question, is how can we improve it? The app has a lot of room for improvement. Just to be completely clear, I do think it's a simple app. It has a lot of improvement. There's 3 sections of improvement. The first is the UI and UX. Second is the logic, the technical aspect of the app. And lastly is actually talking to the customer, aka Fanny. We'll start with UI and UX. The app logo, I think, is fine. I like it. I actually really like it. The main activity, so the first thing the user sees is too simple, in my opinion. There should be something else. I think that the easy thing to add would be to actually have if you remember, there was whatchamacallit, there's nothing between the new category button and the recycler view. I think something that would make it just slightly better and that would be easy to implement is just a text view that says, hey, user, hey, Fanny, what do you need help with today? And she'd be like, oh, I need help with feeling angry. So she's going to click on anger and it's going to show her the quotes for anger. I think that would be something that adds nice aesthetic to it without making it anything complicated at all. Another fix, an easy fix, is the colors on the app. I do think the randomness of it is not really aesthetically pleasing. I do like the colors. I don't like how the randomness, because they could open the app and all the tiles are red, or the tiles are in a weird color coordination. I do think there could be some kind of algorithm to make sure that there's limited amount of duplicates. So obviously if we have, I believe it was like 7 or 8 colors, obviously if there's more than 8 categories, there's going to be duplicates. But we want to make sure that before 8, there's no duplicates, and after 8, the duplicates make sense. It's not like, oh, after 8, red, something like that. Something further that would actually add more time into building would be to allow the user to actually coordinate their own categories. I think that's a good idea, actually. Another thing that would be, since we're on the topic of color, is actually the text. Because the text is white, and some of the colors, the background makes it difficult to actually read the text. So finding a solution to make it more legible would benefit it greatly. There's a couple solutions. I was looking online for it. There's different ways to implement. I decided not to do that because this was supposed to be super, super easy for you to be able to do it in less than 1 hour. Then we go to quote activity. So that's where we actually see the quote. And there's the biggest improvement is in the UX department, not really in the UI. And it's the editing of the quotes. I think it's very unclear how you can edit. So when they click edit, it doesn't really show them what to do. It just says, okay, it says edit and it says save. I do think it's really bad for user experience, because they can't understand it without any instructions. So they like you've seen the app in function. I told you how it works, so you know how to do it. But if somebody never seen this video, never watches this video, or you never tell them how to do it, they won't really be able to figure it out. And in a way that I see of implementing this that would be relatively simple would be when they press edit, it auto focuses on the edit text so that they know they can edit. I don't think you can focus on two edit texts at the same time. Yeah, because there's only one cursor. So that still wouldn't be a full fix. It'll be a lot better though, because this way they know they can actually edit. They see the cursor there, and they can potentially understand they can edit also the source. Another way you can implement an improvement with this would be to have a highlight function. So it would highlight both, when they press edit, it would highlight both the quote text and the source text so that it can tangibly see that, oh, I can edit this. That would be a nice implementation. I think that would be a really good UX for them to know how to edit it. Another thing that will help with the UX is definitely the new quote button. It has a similar issue. The easiest at the top of my mind to fix that would be to split them into two buttons. One is going to be generate new random quote, and then it's going to be add new quote. So this way they can know exactly which one to click. The thing right now with the new quote is it doesn't make sense, because if you click on new quote, you might either be under the assumption that you're going to see a new quote, or that you're going to add a new quote. Right now, new quote does both. It does both only if they know they have to long press. So again, it's not something that they can figure out just on their own. Like, they have to be educated on that, which I think makes the UX poorly. Like, I think it's poor UX design in this case scenario. Like, this app is not full. Like I said, it's not fully done. It's very short, very simple app to build. That's why I'm taking this section to talk about how we can improve it, because it's something also you're going to figure out for almost all your projects. There's always going to be improvements that could be made. We're also going to be talking about improvement, the logic. So the biggest problem, which you probably can tell and we've spoken about, is that nothing is saved in this app. So if they make a change, they add a category, like once they close it, it's gone. Or if they add a quote and then they leave the quote activity, it's gone. It's no longer saved. And the easiest way, not the easiest, the ways to actually make this work is to use the Room API on Android, which is essentially, it's just SQL database that saves locally on the phone, so that whenever, like for example, Fanny uses the app, she'll actually keep the quotes that she's edited, the quotes that she's added, the categories that she's added. Or it could also be something that's saved on an external server. Now you can create your own Node.js server. That's what I know how to use, so that's why I use that example. There's other things you can use, just other frameworks. You could use AWS, a Node Cloud Server, or you could use Firebase. I've used Firebase. I think it's really quick. It's easy to implement. So you could do that to make sure that these things are saved, because it's kind of frustrating that they're not saved. Another thing that actually could be definitely improved on in the logic aspect of the app is the quote object. So the quote object right now only has a title and nothing else. That's all the object holds. I think what would be great to do would actually be to implement an array list of quote objects into the category. So for example, if she no longer feels angry ever anymore, which is pretty great, is if she deletes the category of angry, it would also delete the list of quotes, because otherwise it's just going to be there. I shouldn't actually never be able to access it, because the only way for her to access it is through clicking on the category. So it takes up space for no reason. because it's text, it's not really a big deal. I think it's bad to do that though. I just think it's bad practice. So highly recommend if you do end up doing that to make sure to edit the category object to allow a list of quotes to be shared, and so they can be edited and deleted. And if you want access to the project file, you can get access to it and all the other projects on this. Well, I guess they're products too on this channel. Then click the link below in the description. You get access to all of it for only $1 a month. So it's very cheap. You can cancel anytime you want. If you just want it for this project or whatever it is in the previous projects, and you don't want it for the next projects, then you just buy it for $1. The links down in the description. You should definitely cop it because you don't have to pause, rewind, pause, rewind, pause, rewind. And the most important way to improve this app, though, do you know what it is? Drum roll. It's actually talking to the customer, especially if you're consulting. Like that's your client is the primary person that you have to, I wouldn't say please, it's the person you have to serve the best, because they're the ones who know what they want, or maybe they're not fully sure what they want. You're there to provide them the value. You're there to help to guide them to the treasure that they're seeking. So if they don't know exactly what they want, so if they don't understand the differences between black and gray, then you kind of show them. And the best way to lead them is to ask them questions to figure out exactly what they're seeking. For example, if there's miscommunication, it's going to cost you a lot of time, and it's going to be unfortunately, it's going to be your fault. If there's miscommunication and you build something that the client doesn't want, didn't ask for, at least I don't think they asked for because of miscommunication, then it's going to cost you. So you don't want to do that. And if you're building something for like yourself, for business, then definitely this would be considered, I would consider this an MVP. So once you have an MVP, it takes you about an hour to build it. Then you go out to customers, you ask them to use the product. And this way you get to see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense to the customer. And then you can update it accordingly. Or if they tell you it's perfect, then you know you have a winner. And now all you have to do is just promote, sell, and bask in your money. Now that we have this product, the next question is, how can we monetize this idea? I didn't build this app with the intent of selling it. That being said, it is important to try to sell it because it builds the skill to sell, especially when you build something yourself. It's very important. It's how you get money. And you never know. It might be something that people really enjoy and you get a nice stream of income. And who says no to nice money, especially when you created something out of like your imagination, you created it and people are getting so much value out of it that they want to give their time and money in exchange for what you built. It's an amazing feeling. And I hope you experience it because it's an amazing feeling, to be honest. Like people actually paying you money for things. It's great. Even them asking it for free. Like I just really enjoy people using my stuff. So these are some ideas that I've come up with to monetize it. If you have any other ideas, let me know. If you actually want to build this product out and change it and actually monetize it, it's up to you. I'm not against it. It's yours. You can do whatever you want to do with it. These are the 3 business models that I've come up with rather quickly. I didn't really, sit down for hours on end and try to think of some ideas. These are quick ideas that I came up with. I'll share them with you. And if you want to implement them and execute them, go ahead. You have the right to get that money. The first one, actually, I'm thinking, which would actually make it there won't be a lot of coding involved. There will be some. I think with all these ideas, there will be some because it's not fully finished. The first one is actually selling the app as a pack of quotes for low cost. So it could be, obviously you would have to have some kind of a good headline and a good sales pitch to get them to purchase. It could be, how to deal with the daily battles of life. That could be the headline. And you tell them, okay, you have a collection of quotes to inspire throughout the day whenever you're feeling down, so that you can remember that other people have been in your place, blah, blah, blah. So that could be kind of the sales pitch. It's not fleshed out. And that would be something at a low cost that could be sold. So it's a one-time fee. Not added to that, though, there's something else you could do. And it could be a kind of maybe even freemium, where they buy packs of quotes. So it could be, do you want quotes for anxiety? It's going to be 99 cents. Do you want quotes on happiness? It's going to be 99 cents. Things of that nature. Or do you want quotes from Eastern philosophers or Western philosophers, French philosophers? Do you want quotes from the Bible? Do you want quotes from the Quran? Do you want quotes from Alex Hormozi? So these are all things that could happen. That's how you can potentially target different niches from that. Actually, it's a pretty good idea. It's a pretty good idea. We can do it more in the vision of what Fannie had in mind, so that that's the second idea. We do more in the vision of Fannie's, and that is the content is created by the user, which would mean that we make sure that they can actually save the content, the quotes and things like that. And I'm thinking for that one, it's going to be a freemium model. So they get X amount of categories and X amount of quotes for free. And if they want to get more, then they would pay a monthly fee or a one-time fee, however you prefer. I do think monthly would be nicer to do. Again, it's like pricing strategy. I'm not great at that yet. So you would have to play with it and figure out what people want and how you can optimize the revenue that the product is generating for the company. Third business model, which would be a B2B, it would be selling to influencers. This would definitely generate more revenue more quickly, because you will be able to actually approach the influencer, be like, hey, I got this thing, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to buy it? No, not do you want to buy it. You have to buy it, because otherwise there's so much money off the table. You have to, make them want to buy it. Not like, do you want to buy it? Like, nope, you have to buy it. It's important. It's needed. Your audience needs this. Like, they need this. So get it for them, right? This would be essentially a white label product. You would talk to an influencer, figure out what exactly they would prefer. Maybe they have specific quotes. Maybe even if it's, let's say I was to have this as a technical thing. So it could be, oh, do you want some help with the basics of Android development? Here are some quick, cheat sheet, quick cheat sheet of concepts, so that you can always refer back to it. I think that would be pretty cool, actually. It could be pretty useful. That being said, you would have to morph the code a lot more. It's not going to be difficult. It's just going to have to morph it based on what the influencer wants. And the influencer now is able to either give that, when they become white label, they're going to give it to their audience for free, or they can charge, which is something you'd have to code to, which you can do. You would just use the Google Play billing library. I forgot what it's actually called. Google has an API for billing, so you can actually create that, or you can use Stripe. That's the two I know. The Stripe implementation is actually, in my opinion, is difficult. It's not really difficult. It's just, it takes more effort, because you have to actually have a server to do it. If you don't want to do that, then you can just go with Google and just have them handle it. They do take 30%, by the way, just so you know. And those are really like the 3 ways I thought of being able to monetize this idea. I will probably write some sales letters based on these 3 ideas, figure out if anybody wants to actually sell, like purchase, to essentially just to test out, because that's how we get better. Remember, that's practice makes, if you want to get better at something, practicing is the best way to do this. And if you want to have access to the source code, so you don't have to do everything by hand, you can have access to this project's source code and all the projects on this channel for just $1 US a month. That's very, very low cost. So if you want to get access to it, the link is in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know how you're actually going to implement this. How have you improved this app? Because it's very basic. So let me see what you've built. Film a YouTube video or show us what it is on the Play Store. Would love to see what you've accomplished. What's your imagination like?